Junshi is the name of this kid. His mother had recently given birth to his sister, therefore he was overjoyed that day. He even entered the infant's room to visit his little sister, but sadly, the moment he arrived, chaos broke out. His sister was switched for someone else's baby because of him. Many years later, the parents of Junshi and his sister she raised them with genuine affection. Junshi constantly spoilt his sister since he loved her so much. He purchased her a birthday present every year, and, despite his tendency to play practical jokes on her, he gave his everything to his only child. Enshi's fortunes were very different from those of the girl called Shinai. On the day of her birth, she was the newborn girl who had been exchanged with her. Shinai sold noodles while living with her mother. She received daily reprimands for her inability to assist in their stall. She came from a low-income background, thus this tended to irritate her. Her brother was older than her, but he was unloving and always in need of money. And she was willing to assist because he couldn't imagine what it would be like to have an older brother who couldn't protect her, but Shinai became enraged with Enshi instead of thanking her for her generosity. Enshi had decided to help after seeing Shinai and her brother ask for money one day. She was especially appreciative of this as She was an elder brother and a gift to her. And she had a terrible accident that day after her brother and she got home from school. She was taken to the hospital right away since she had major injuries to her head. At this point, an unexpected fact started to surface. And she required a blood donor at the time, and oddly, none of her family members had the same blood type. Her parents were taken aback by this peculiarity and eventually learned that Enshi was not their biological kid. When Enshi awoke the following day, she paid her a visit and gave her a CD player as a gift. He presented the gift in the hopes that she would recover quickly. She thanked him for the present and told him about a dream she'd had in which their parents informed her she wasn't their biological kid. She laughed, thinking her story was absurd. She learned shortly afterward that Enshi's dream was more than simply a fantasy, but rather a painful reality. When a lady encountered his parents, she declared that Enshi was not Junshi's biological sister since her child had been switched with theirs. The family as a whole was upset by this revelation. They wanted to meet their biological kid, and, of course, they couldn't just let go of Enshi. After Enshi was released from the hospital that day, a girl appeared out of nowhere and asserted her rights as the biological child of the Shi family. Shinai was her name. Knowing that Enshi didn't belong there and that their futures had been altered, he urged her to go. Enshi was deeply saddened by this tragedy. She left the home to play with a tree she frequently frequented since she couldn't face the agony of accepting this horrible fate. Junshi soon arrived and consoled her. Despite the fact that they were not brothers, he vowed that they would never be apart, and he demonstrated this by carving his name beneath Enshi's name on the tree. After that, they agreed to get together once more. And she departed the Shi family home without notifying anybody that Shinai had moved in and thought that she shouldn't have been there in the first place. Shinai had resided there for a while. She reached the noodles stand owned by his biological mother. Because she was impoverished and concerned that Enshi wouldn't be able to live comfortably like she used to, her mother felt embarrassed of herself when she learned that her biological kid had paid her a visit. Mrs. Shi arrived shortly after to transport Enshi to the United States. She said that she was traveling to America with her family in order to provide better learning conditions for Shinai and Junshi. She also extended an invitation to Enshi to accompany her, but in the end, Enshi declined Mrs. Shi's offer since she preferred to stay with her real mother to look after her. Enshi grew up to be a very attractive girl years later. To make money, she was willing to work many jobs. She did this because she wanted to buy her mother a house, and she was so busy that she didn't give her boyfriend any thought. Money was her only concern. And she was not only stunning, but she developed into a highly intellectual person. His ability to win over her clients' hearts to purchase the house he was selling impressed Enshi's pal. When Enshi and her companion returned home from work one day, the vehicle in front of them had forgotten his wallet, and as a result, they became trapped at the toll booth. The queue was becoming farther and farther away. The man was Han Tai, a conglomerate's attractive son. And she didn't appear to care in the slightest. She also paid the toll for him since she wanted to be served right away. This was the first time he had ever encountered a lady who wasn't attracted to him, so he was confused by the occurrence and discreetly snapped pictures of her license plate to identify her. It found out that Han Tai was a close buddy of Junshi. Han Tai and his pals assumed that Junshi had returned to get employment there, but his true motivation was just to visit Enshi, his adored sister. That evening, Han Tai unexpectedly encountered Enshi once more, who was joined by her friend for a post-work gathering. Enshi's companion enthusiastically introduced her to Han Tai, who was well received. During the event, Han Tai played a song that triggered memories of Junshi for Enshi, leading her to mistakenly believe he was her lost brother. However, she soon realized her error as Han Tai was just a stranger she had met. Following their meeting, Han Tai approached Shi to settle the toll fee from the previous day, but she declined. In truth, she avoided him as she did not want to engage with individuals like him. Later, she sought solace at the tree where her and her brother's names were etched, shedding tears as she longed for her loving family. The following day, she resumed work as a crab cracker for affluent clients who happened to be friends of Han Tai. Initially, Han Tai assigned tasks to Shi, but his friends began to ridicule her due to her lower social standing. Unable to bear this treatment, Han Tai stood up for Shi. Despite his efforts, Shi insisted she did not require his pity and departed. Feeling indebted to Shi, Han Tai followed her to repay his debt, but she turned down his assistance, stating she had more pressing matters to attend to. It was revealed that the CD player gifted by Shi had malfunctioned, prompting Shi to seek repairs. Despite initial reluctance due to outdated components, the repairman agreed to help Shi due to her loyalty as a customer. Shortly after, Shi arrived at the repair shop with his own CD player for fixing. The repairman was surprised to see both devices and mentioned receiving a similar order from someone before Shi, leading him to believe Shi had visited earlier. Determined to locate Shi scoured the city until he spotted her. They agreed to meet at a cafe to catch up after being separated for a long time. Overwhelmed with emotion, she poured out her feelings to Shi, expressing a mix of anger and longing for his presence. Meanwhile, Shi patiently waited for Shi to come to terms with her emotions until she collapsed from exhaustion. The following day, Shi awoke in her childhood home and was surprised to find that it had not been sold. Shi explained that his parents had sold all their other properties but kept this house as a memory of their family, despite its significant damage. As Shi was preparing to leave, Shi invited her to accompany him. He took her to a place where he had a gift he wanted to give her, expressing his hope to reunite with her after their long separation. Since they were children, Shi had promised to give her a birthday gift every year, showing that he still remembered and cared for her. She was moved by the realization that her feelings were reciprocated, and they both felt a desire to be closer than mere siblings. From then on, they began spending time together, bringing Shi happiness at being reunited with Shi. However, their joy was short-lived when a woman suddenly introduced herself as Shi's girlfriend, and Shi did not deny it. She decided to bury her feelings upon learning this, while also meeting Shinai after many years. Shinai claimed to have a special relationship with Han Tai, but he denied it, stating he had no romantic involvement with anyone and that Shinai had come to find Shi because their mother was ill. The next day, Shinai attempted to get closer to Han Tai, hoping to become his girlfriend, but he rejected her, revealing his feelings for Shi and his desire to be with her exclusively. This upset Shinai, who felt that Shi was taking everyone away from her. Observing that Shi and Shi were not as close as before, Han Tai began making efforts to get closer to Shi. He took her for a walk and shared about his family background, being the only child of a wealthy family, feeling lonely after his parents' divorce and subsequent remarriages. Despite his outwardly arrogant demeanor, Han Tai was revealed to have a kind heart, regularly donating to a nursing home where he was well known. When he brought Shi there for the first time, the residents welcomed her warmly, hoping that she would become Han Tai's life partner. Han Tai became more determined in his pursuit of Shi, even seeking information about her past from Shi, who hesitated due to jealousy. This made Han Tai realize that they were both competing for Shi's affection. Undeterred, Han Tai decided to approach Shi with even more resolve, aiming to lift her spirits. This brought happiness to Shi's friends, who saw him as the one who could break through her tough exterior. Eventually, Han Tai gathered the courage to confess his feelings to Shi, praising her honesty but encouraging her to take her time in considering his words. The next day, Shinai unexpectedly visited Shi's noodle stall to see her mother, prompting Shi to give them space to work out their feelings. Meanwhile, Shi met with Mr. and Mrs. Shi, with Mrs. Shi revealing her illness due to missing Shi greatly and urging Shi to find her. Upon learning of her declining health, she chose not to pursue treatment for an illness inherited from her biological mother, knowing her time was limited. Despite her reluctance, those around her took action. Han Tai redecorated her room, Shi helped bring her home from the hospital, and Shi's girlfriend stepped back upon realizing his unwavering love for Shi. She eventually requested to go back home, where Shi and Han Tai welcomed her with a tidy room and a new house bought by Han Tai according to her wishes. They then presented gifts that had been sold and repurchased by Han Tai as a gesture of their deep care and love. Ultimately, both men proposed to Shi, leaving the decision in her hands. She ultimately chose Junshi, her first love, allowing her to spend her remaining days with the man she loved deeply.